Hi everyone, my name is Brandon Arshaga, and in this video, I'm going to talk about an important legal topic from Chapter 6 of our textbook, the standard of care, especially as it applies to professional negligence. To help explain the topic, I'll be using this clipboard, something simple, but it represents responsibility. When professionals take on the client, patient, or sensitive work, they also take on the duty to do it carefully and competently. According to our textbook, the standard of care is breached when someone acts less carefully than a reasonable person would in a similar situation. The court used what called the reasonable person test. It's like legal yardstick for how a typical thoughtful person would behave. But when we're talking about professionals like doctors, lawyers, or accountants, the expectations are more higher. The law doesn't just ask what a reasonable person would do, but what a reasonable professional in that field would do. The court considered several things. First is the experience. Are they meeting the standard expected of someone in the role? Second is the timing. Were their actions reasonable based on the information available at that time? Third is the error of judgment. Was it mistake any other reasonable professional might have made? Fourth is the approved practice. Did they follow accepted industry methods? And lastly, is the statutory standards. Did they met any legal requirements tied to their job? That's why I choose the case of Walker State versus York French General Hospital, a 2001 Supreme Court of Canada case. What stand out to me was how it showed the real-life impact of not meeting the professional standard of care. Here's what happened. Blood donors who were unknowingly infected with HIV donated blood. Despite some warning signs, the Canadian Red Cross Society's screening system did not adequately identify high-risk donors. As a result, some blood recipients contracted HIV through transfusions. The families of these recipients sued the hospital and the Canadian Red Cross Society for negligence. The key question in the case was whether the hospital and the Canadian Red Cross Society meet the standard of care expected of responsible medical institutions. The court examined whether they followed accepted screening procedures and if their system was sufficient to prevent known risks like HIV transfusion through blood. The judge applied the reasonable professional standard and found that the hospital and the Canadian Red Cross Society did not meet this standard. Even though the HIV was a relatively new and feared disease at that time, the screening procedures in the place were inadequate to cut and exclude infected donors. This matched exactly what we learned from this course. When a professional or institution fails to meet their expected standard and harm result, it constitutes negligence. Because of this failure, the court awarded damages to the victims to compensate for the harm caused. So, why should this matter to us, future business leaders? Well, whether you're leading a healthcare facility, a financial firm, or even running a small business, you'll have a duty of care to others, your customers, employees, or the public. This case reminds us that when we ignore risk or cut corners, the consequence can be serious, whether legal action, financial loss, or damaged trust. This measuring tape, this one, this is not just a tool. This is a symbol. The law uses the standard of care as a kind of measuring tape to see whether professional actions measure up. If you fall short, you may be liable. As a future leaders, we need to build a workplace where people are trained, procedures are followed, and risks are taken seriously. That's how we avoid negligence. And more importantly, how we earn trust and respect in our communities. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this helped you understand how standard of care works. Stay responsible, stay informed, and lead with care.